Let's see. All right.
Record.
We're recording. All
We're
right.
recording.
So, Miss Kimble,
Yes.
could you please state your full name and when you were born?
Adrian Megan Kimble,
Mhm.
January 2nd, 1955.
Mhm. And where did you grow up, by the way?
Shrewsbury, New Jersey.
Okay. Okay. Did you have any kind of like interest in cars or motorsports? I mean, growing up at all?
None.
None.
None. None whatsoever.
Yeah, like I mean, no racetracks or anything like that nearby. Nothing.
We had Wall Stadium,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually IndyCar came to the Meadowlands after it was built, but that was in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So there was just local and English Town for drag racing.
Okay.
So those were the two local tracks.
And
Mostly,
oh, go ahead.
mostly Wall Stadium was regional NASCAR or motorcycle races.
Okay. Do you recall going to any races? I mean, even if you weren't into it, do you remember, any?
I went to Wall Stadium for a dirt motorcycle race,
Mm-hmm.
probably in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and that would have been it.
Okay.
One time.
Okay. So, yeah. So it was, there was this kind of more, again, local sort of
Yes.
racing there, wasn't exactly like, I'm going to say like Daytona.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, it wasn't something. So, I mean, what was your initial connection to motorsports? Like, we talked a bit about it, but if you could, kind of fill us in.
In 1979, I switched careers from a pharmacy tech and I went into the travel agency business.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in travel, I was managing an agency, and one of my customers made actuators, and he became interested in Formula One races. So I started booking him to Formula One races in the United States and in England and Italy. And then I started doing travel for Jessel Valvetrain and their stock car team. So that was my first introduction into racing. I did some travel for Roger Penske, but really it was my friend and client that got involved in Formula One that I went to my first Formula One race in Las Vegas. And I think it was about 82, 83, maybe a little before that. They did two races in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace. So that was my first experience.
Okay. And what do you think of this, first time going to an F1 race?
It was very interesting because at the time there was very little security. Mario Andretti was racing and you could walk right up to the cars, talk to them. It was open pits.
AJ Foyt there too?
It was as if you had a hot pass for a NASCAR race, or you could just walk along the pits and talk to the crew, talk to the drivers. So that was interesting to be able to look at the cars and meet the drivers.
And what did ticket cost if you had to guess? What was
back then maybe $150.
Oh wow! So
it was inexpensive.
Yeah. But I mean, then again, I guess you're getting to kind of go a bit of everywhere. It's not just And was that general admission? I mean,
that was general admission. Huh. Yep. Yeah. They built the stands out behind Caesar's Palace and had the course set up, and they had stands so you could go from the stands into Caesar's Palace, because it was time of year when it was very hot. So if you got too hot, you could just go into the hotel. So it was very convenient and really a fantastic introduction to a race, to have that kind of access and not realize that that wasn't the norm.
Yeah. So, right. This was still not, I mean, because it was partly or in large part because of the work you were doing that you kind of had this extra access. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So how'd you meet Wally Dallenbach?
In 1983, I went with my fiance to his ranch in Colorado. Every
Mm-hmm.
year he does a invitational motorcycle ride called
Mm-hmm.
the Colorado 500. And a lot of the Indy drivers at this point, Wally had stopped racing. I didn't even know he was a previous driver. And at this point, he was a chief steward for IndyCar racing. So I met Wally and his wife Pepe on his invitational ride. And in the coming years, going every year out to their ranch, met a lot of the IndyCar drivers, Bobby Alonso, Randy Lewis, Kenny Schrader, Emerson Fittipaldi, Chip Ganassi.
Wow, yeah, all the big names.
Yeah, they would come because of the position that Wally was in. So there was always, so it was like a celebrity invitational ride.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting.
So you rode?
Oh, I didn't ride. It was men only back then.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yes, the men would ride 500 miles through the Rockies on the dirt paths, not the roads. And the women would shop, eat, and party.
While the men were doing that, were you with their wives?
Yeah, I stayed at the ranch with Pepe.
Yeah.
Actually, the first year, my roommate was Al Unser's wife.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know anybody, and I can't remember the IndyCar, one of the doctors, Steve Olvey. The second year,
right. Safety pioneer.
Second year, I was rooming with Steve Olvey's wife. And then after that, I stayed on the ranch at Pepe's, up on the ranch with Pepe and Jane Graham and some other people. There were two ladies from New Jersey that I became friends with. So originally, Wally was from New Jersey. So we all stayed in their guest cabin above the garage. So first two times I was in the motel, and then from then on it was up at the ranch.
Mm-hmm. And so is it fair to say, I mean, just, with the general kind of makeup of the people, that, you're talking about, who you were with, I mean, they were mostly all motorsports people. It sounded like you were kind of the odd person out.
Yeah, I mean, Danny Thompson was there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was, we were really nobodies. The only thing was my husband, well, fiance at the time, was doing the ride, and I went with him. And then from there, I went to a computer conference in Arizona. But that's how I met them. Had no idea, who Wally was. And first time we went to race with them, I was kind of amazed. No, actually, at the Colorado 500, I was amazed when people would say, "Oh, can we come up the ranch and see what their house looks like?" And I didn't understand why people would be interested, in where they live or what it's like. It was kind of like, I didn't get what it was. I didn't know who he was. So it was really,
right. It's like, okay, what's
I mean, it's a ranch. It's nice. It's home. It's kind of like, I didn't get like the fascination with it. So, with time I learned who he was, but at that point we all had just become regular friends, not, knowing his history in racing and then his position with IndyCar.
Do you think you maybe found that a little bit refreshing that, you maybe not as like a fan, not to give like any like bad, like grief to fans.
Oh, no. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Like Pepe knew that, I think myself and one of the other ladies from New Jersey, her husband had been friends with Wally for years. So he knew Wally back when he'd started racing. And the other woman, her husband had been coming on the ride. So I don't know if Betsy knew who Wally was, but it was just friendship. It wasn't the fact that he was anybody or, it was just a friendship based not in racing.
Yeah, that it's like that, the connection you guys made just as friends, right, came before, knowing anything.
Right. And it's lasted until this time, and I think a lot of it is because it wasn't based strictly just on racing. You know, it
Hmm.
was an out of racing friendship.
Hmm. Were there any times that you felt a little bit starstruck? Like at any point you felt sort of starstruck with some of the people you came across as you got like a little bit more
Yeah,
into
when
it?
we started to go to races with them, we the
Hmm.
closest to our house in New Jersey was Nazareth, so we would
Hmm.
go over
Oh yeah, that's
and
Mario Andretti's right from.
right in Mario's backyard, and you know
I mean,
we would,
Nazareth, PA. Sorry, but anyway,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
um, we would be in the pits with Wally, and you know Paul Newman would walk up, and it
Hmm.
was like, oh wow, that's Paul Newman.
Yeah.
You know, Chip Ganassi, but he had been on the Colorado 500, Roger Penske, all the drivers, like everybody knew Wally, and it was like, oh, you know, I guess he is somebody.
Yeah.
And then when he would go out and inspect the track before the race, we would ride along with them.
Hmm.
And, you know, you could see people waving and everything. So it was kind of strange to see him at work, not knowing the magnitude of who he was. So
Yeah.
that was kind of interesting. It was like, huh, you know, there's something
Yeah.
more here than just, you know, him having been a previous race car driver.
It almost kind of came into waves like, oh, he really is somebody.
He
You
is
know?
somebody, yeah.
Yeah.
It was very strange when I kept, like, people would recognize him because of his
Uh-huh.
cowboy hat he always wore. And wherever we would be in whatever state, whether it's Florida, you know, at one of the races, people would come up and want his autograph. And I was like, oh, I guess, you know, it was kind of surreal that people recognized him and knew who he was. And, you know, when I first met him, I had no idea.
Hmm.
So that was interesting.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite race you ever went to?
Well, I would have to say my favorite race was the 1982 Montreal Formula One race,
Hmm.
only because that's where I met my now husband.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
So,
So.
yeah, so I met him in Canada, and he lived 5 streets away from me.
Hmm.
And he had gone to high school with Danny Jessel of Jessel Valve Train, and my client, he went to high school with him also, and he was the
Oh,
one that
small world.
got me into Formula One. So it's amazing how intertwined everything
Hmm.
was.
Yeah.
So that would probably be my favorite race.
Yeah.
But it was fun doing the IndyCar because we would go to the races, and was before they had electronic timing. So we'd be sitting in the timing booth, and we'd always pick the the least likely to win drivers because it was less work keeping track of them and clicking clicking their
Like,
times and writing it
okay.
down as they'd come around, and usually they'd never finish the race, so
Yeah,
you know then
right,
you could
right.
just sit and watch the race. So
Oh, that's
that
funny.
was fun.
Yeah. So,
So,
let's see. Let me find here. I was just finding my place there. And what do you remember? Because you mentioned to me, I think, about attending the Italian Grand Prix at Monza,
yes,
right? So tell me about that. I mean, that's like, just an absolutely iconic race.
yep. And I again wasn't real familiar with Formula One, but had
Mhm.
gotten tickets in Milan, then drove to Bergamo next to Monza, stayed at a hotel that the Renault team was staying at,
Mhm.
unbeknownst to me, became friends with some of their photographers, and then the morning of the race, you drive into Monza, and it's a huge park-like setting.
Mhm.
So the place of the track was beautiful. You parked, you walked through a park. I was amazed at the number of people, the number of police with canine dogs,
Mhm.
and just the overall, I guess, number of people and enormity of the race.
Mhm.
And the Italians are very fanatic about their Italian races, and it was a real experience to go from Las Vegas to that. It was, you know,
Yeah.
totally different world. So that was very interesting to see a whole different side of how Formula One is popular in Europe as opposed to when it's in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But a
Yeah,
beautiful course.
yeah. I've heard. I want to, absolutely see a race there
Oh
one.
yeah.
Yeah. And what year was this, by the way?
This was 1981.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, okay. So
And
this is even before. This was before the
oh, you
race.
know what? I'm sorry, it was
Yeah.
82. We had done
Oh yeah. I was
Vegas.
gonna say. I remember you saying
Yes.
Vegas was 82. Okay.
We
So.
did Vegas and then went to Italy. So we went to Italy in the fall because the race is usually in September. So that September is when went to Monza. So
Mhm.
it was interesting to see the difference between how it was received in the US and Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Next would have been Montreal,
Okay.
and
Okay.
they're pretty fanatical up there also.
Yeah.
So it
Right.
was bigger time than in, the three races that I saw in the United States. So it
It's yeah.
really
I bet
brought
you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
it just really brought into the worldwide appeal of F1 as compared to IndyCar, NASCAR. This was more like soccer. It was
I was gonna say,
worldwide.
like, that's kind of my thought too. Is probably like, yeah, there's some diehard fans of soccer here, but it doesn't even compare right to
Yeah,
Europe,
exactly.
South America. Yeah, but now you mentioned about getting to know some of the Renault photographers. I can't remember if he was taking pictures for them, but I know a prominent photojournalist, French photojournalist at the time was Bernard Caillet. Do you recall if you came across him, whether there or elsewhere? I know he was a long time Formula One.
Yeah, no, the one that I met,
Mm-hmm.
and over the years, he had taken a picture of me from the pits of me in the stands, and he had sent it to me at the travel agency.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
I think his name was something like Hans van der Walker.
Oh
And
wow.
we had kept in touch for a couple of years, but then, lost touch. I don't know if he stopped being a Renault photographer. It'd be
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see where he is today, but don't even know how to find him. So
Yeah, I'm trying to think. His name, that almost sounds Dutch to me.
yeah, he was from,
Yeah.
oh, I forget the town that he was in, but he was in Holland, and he
Okay. Yeah.
traveled with Renault. So that was interesting, but just happened to meet them, in the hotel having breakfast, and
Uh-huh.
they told us when they were leaving for the track and for us to, to go with them. So that's what we did. And, you could see them going around. They had obviously full access. So they were all over the place taking pictures. So that was interesting by itself.
Yeah, yeah, just to be there for that. What did you find when you got more into Formula One that there was any driver or drivers you rooted for in particular?
Ayrton Senna was
Uh-huh.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Uh, my friend that I was making travel arrangements for that got me interested in Formula One. He became a minor sponsor of Terrell Racing in Formula One, and that's the team that Jackie Stewart had driven
Hmm.
for. So when we would go to England, we would be guests of Ken Terrell, and they'd have
Wow.
hotel and pit passes waiting for us at the hotel, and we just had to get to the track. So we went to Brands Hatch once and Silverstone twice. So,
Wow.
it was
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, just to kind of walk in. Oh, Mr. Terrell left this for you. So
Oh
that
yeah,
was
that's
like,
that's that's a
you
nice
go,
move to pull. Yeah.
yeah, it was like, a whole different dichotomy of the beginning to that. It was like, wow, that was a jump.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was interesting to be able to be in the pits, see everything, talk to the drivers. Richard Branson came up. He was in the pits,
Yeah.
and my husband said to him,
Virgin Mobile, right?
Virgin Atlantic
Yeah,
Airlines,
and
Virgin,
Atlantic Airlines. Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
and my husband said, oh, we just flew over on your airplane." And he said, "Oh, how did you like it?" My husband said, "Oh, very much." And he got down on his knees and was like shaking my husband's hand. And it was like, this was really weird. So it's kind of just the, just oddities that
Yeah.
happen through the years
Yeah.
and interesting people that you get to meet.
Absolutely. And speaking of Senna, did you ever meet Senna?
Um, no, it was shortly after that. Well, when he passed, I'm trying to think, we were doing Montreal pretty regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And then don't know if he was racing when I went to the Dallas race,
Mm-hmm.
which they had there once. So I never personally got to meet him, but quite a few, especially the racers for Terrell, we
Mm-hmm.
got to meet. And so that was fun. It was really mixing with different kinds, from Indy people to Formula One people. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was interesting to see the difference in the caliber of the equipment, the people, international to more national recognition. So it was interesting to see the difference. And after a while, it seemed as if Formula One had less interest in the fans
Mm-hmm.
because of the amount of money coming into Formula One, whereas Indy, it was still approachable and didn't really price itself out of the average
Out of,
person.
like,
Yeah.
easily, yeah.
They went to minimums as far as, let's say, food choices at the track, things that you could do. So, there became that shift of them moving up to a higher end sport. And because of the money, things changed a lot from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, money tends to complicate things, right?
Yeah, it does. And, the ticket prices, everything went up.
Oh
So
yeah, I
it
mean, it's like
became really,
you can see a lot of things.
the tickets. Yeah, it changed over the years from, the early 80s up until the 90s. You could
Mhm.
see a shift.
Yeah, yeah, because right. I mean, again, it was that time when you had, I mean, as far as I know from Formula One, I mean, figures like Senna. I mean, he was, like, I mean, uh, an icon. I mean,
Right.
I guess the corollary, right, or comparison to NASCAR is, Earnhardt Senior.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, it's that's interesting. So what are some other races that stand out in particular to you? Like, what were some that really were just stand out? Whether for the track, for the crowd, for what happened during the race.
I would say, let me think. The crowd would be Monza because that was my first
Mm-hmm.
race outside of North America. Montreal, beautiful setting, wonderful park again like setting. Uh, Indy in Toronto was always fun to do, with Wally and Pepe and the racers in the road course. Nazareth was a favorite because Wally and Pepe originally were from New Jersey, so we would all get together with everybody on the East Coast that rode on the Colorado 500. So Nazareth was always fun because there were a lot of friends and family that would
Mm-hmm.
come to that. So I'd probably say those are the favorites. I mean, New Hampshire was fun, Milwaukee was fun, but I think probably an IndyCar it would be Nazareth because of all the friends and family that were in that area.
And what about Indy itself? Uh,
I never got to Indy. My
really, never
husband,
got to
yep,
Indy. Yeah,
never
yeah.
got to Indy.
Brushing shoulders with all these people, never.
I know, never
Yeah.
got to Indy. My husband went one year with Wayne Jessel from Jessel Valve Train, but they went out during Carbonation Day.
Mm-hmm.
And they went to the museum, and Wayne, at that time, they were still doing valve trains for a lot of NASCAR and IndyCar. So, he had gone out the week leading up to the 500, but that's one race we never got to.
Wow.
Hard
Kind of
to
funny.
get passes, hard to get tickets, because
Yeah.
everybody everybody, there were limited numbers and it really didn't matter who you knew, there were only
Hmm.
so many seats. So
Wow. Yeah.
usually Wally and Pepe's kids or other family members would obviously jump ahead of us on races like that.
Hmm. So let's see. Just trying to get it. See, and so back to Wally. I mean, how did you react to? Again, I know we talked about this before, but his induction into this year's or last year's class, as I should say.
I know for a couple of years we would get information from Colleen, Wally's daughter, and Wally Jr. about the voting for different Hall of Fames. And so when we found out that he had been inducted to the 2020, we were excited because of who he was as a friend, but also because of all the safety measures that he implemented at Indy Cars as far as the safety teams and working to, on the safety of the drivers, as well as his leadership and being seen as a fair chief steward.
Mm.
He strictly went by the rules, whether you liked it or not, didn't matter who you were, he went strictly by the rules. So we were really pleased to see that he finally, well, got into this Hall of Fame besides New Jersey and some of the other
Hmm.
ones, Indy and all that. So we were excited for him and he was excited.
Hmm.
So, we had planned to see him in 2020, but then COVID hit.
Right.
And so we're hoping this year.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Right. You know.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, half of you guys are safe to see him, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but yeah, really yeah, interesting, that I mean it's I guess many times the case with inductees, from what I've understood, but not only his achievements in racing on the track, but
Right.
off the track. I mean, that's it's
Safety and charity work,
yeah.
through the Colorado 500, the
Hmm.
charity aspect, the scholarships and all that. So it's nice for him to be recognized for, fairness as the chief steward, safety brought to IndyCar, and then charity work,
Hmm.
outside of his personal racing days.
Hmm.
So
And
we're excited.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'll close with this one. Looking back, how would you describe the impact motorsports had on your life?
It changed it quite a bit. My travel business changed through context of racing. It gave me, owning a travel agency gave me the access to be able to go to a lot of races, which, led to meeting more people and staying in touch with quite a few of previous racers over the years whenever we'd see them. So it kind of shifted my whole interest into auto racing by, first starting to book Formula One and learning the ins and outs of that and then getting involved in it. And then meeting Wally and Pepe really drove it home as far as Indy. And then when Wally Jr. started racing in NASCAR, then our interest in NASCAR grew with that also. And Kenny Schrader and other drivers that we had met through Wally. So it kind of started Formula One, then Indy and NASCAR.
Hmm.
So it got well-rounded over
Yeah, I
the
was gonna say,
years.
yeah, yeah, right, right. You got quite a few of our categories checked off your list, right? Yeah.
It kind of came full circle.
Yeah, yeah, full circle, if you will. Actually, that's yeah, full
And then end up
trioval, I guess.
living
Yeah,
11 miles from the biggest speedway,
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's
right.
kind of funny that that's where the whole thing ended up,
Uh-huh,
us
yeah.
down here.
So,
So that's kind of the racing intro in a nutshell.
yeah. Well, thanks so much for talking with me, Meg. This was really a pleasure, and I'm glad, uh, for one thing, we kind of got to do this one-on-one. Again,
then we'll figure out how to do it.
Yeah,
So,
the self interview, we'll figure out. There's just a couple kinks with that, but yeah. So yeah, no, it was good to. Gosh, it's been a while since I've actually done a formal interview. So this is really
well, I'm
nice little.
glad I can help. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
thanks for taking the
the
time.
questions were good. You know, you kind of could find out if they know anything about racing. If
Mhm.
not, you know, what would have them come and want to be part of it, you know, to get the experience of this. So I think that way, you'll be able to tell the person's interest, or, you know, what would draw them into wanting to volunteer, you know, if they're a
Yeah,
NASCAR fan or just a race fan. Or so I think it went well. Just let me know if you figure out the record and all that. And if you need any more, just let me know.
absolutely great. I'll send along that self interview presentation to you.
Okay.
I'll make sure that's shared to you so I can whenever it's convenient for you, just get your thoughts on that. So
Okay, I will.
want to get some fresh eyes to look at it. So
Great. Okay, well, I'm glad I could be of help.
all right, great. Let me just